Welcome to Me Reimagined, a space where we step into the impossible version of ourselves, a version we only dream of, so we can create lives we love and the impact we are meant to make.
Welcome to the Me Reimagined podcast. Today's episode is my first solo episode, and I'm going to be bold and say that I'm kicking it off with a bang. The reason I say that is because today I'll share a story with you that I've never really shared before, at least not in its entirety. It's quite raw, deeply personal, and it feels pretty vulnerable to put it out there. It's the story of how I went through many years of bullying in my childhood and adolescence, and how this shaped the person I became. How I put on a variety of armors in the years to follow to hide my wounds, and how I finally was able to face those painful memories and turn them into a story that now empowers me in my daily life instead of leaving me feeling like I'm not enough. I feel both excited and nervous to share this with you. I'm excited because I want to share how you too can take the pain you've experienced, shift your perspective, and find purpose and strength in what you successfully got through. And at the same time, the little girl inside of me is nervous because she's afraid to be judged and ridiculed again, like so many years ago. But I'm giving her a big hug, letting her know that we're safe and we've got this. So now I want to ask you, do you have a pain from your past that still lingers, that shapes the way you see yourself in the world? Maybe it's a memory that pops up in your mind from time to time, or a story that you've buried so deeply you almost convinced yourself it doesn't really exist. But no matter how many years pass or how far you push the memory down, it's still there, quietly influencing your life in ways you might not even be aware of. If you feel like you're still carrying invisible scars from your past, and that this is affecting you or holding you back right now, even if it has been years or even decades like it was for me, and you're wondering how you too can turn your pain into purpose and strength, then I invite you to keep listening. Because the thing is, ignoring pain doesn't make it disappear, and actually facing it, cheesy as it may sound, can really set you free. You have the power to rewrite the narrative of your life and turn your most difficult moments into a source of resilience and power. If I could do it, so can you. So what you will hear today isn't just my story. It's an invitation for you to explore your own. And then take what hurt you and use it to create meaning and beauty for yourself. So let's dive in. Today, I want to tell you a story. It's a story I've never fully shared before, one I wasn't sure I could. For years, I buried it so deep that it felt unreachable, hidden away in the darkest corners of my mind. And each time it tried to resurface, I would push it back down. It was safer that way, or so I thought. But ignoring pain doesn't make it disappear. It lingers, casting shadows over your life, shaping how you see yourself and the world. Sharing this story feels very vulnerable, but I've come to realize that vulnerability is where healing begins. My hope in telling you this is not only to show you my journey, but to encourage you to explore your own story. Because we all have one. And ask yourself if there are parts of it that are holding you back, making you feel small, whispering lies in your ear that don't belong in your mind. Each of us carries pain from the past, moments that shook us and left invisible scars. Maybe your story doesn't look like mine, but most of us know what it's like to feel small, ignored, and unworthy. And if you've ever felt that way, I hope this helps you see that your pain doesn't have to define you. You can rewrite your story and come up blazing on the other side. So let me take you back. Picture the late 90s, boy bands topping the charts, Tamagotchis beeping for attention, and schoolyard pog tournaments that felt more competitive than the Olympics. I was a little girl with pigtails going to primary school, a quiet but curious spirit who enjoyed playing and discovering. I wasn't an outsider back then. I loved learning, got along with my 20-something classmates, and had an unshakable belief in people. My teachers praised me, and life felt stable, happy, and safe. But then the tide turned. It began subtly, like a crack in the ice. I can't pinpoint the exact moment, but I vaguely remember there being some conflict and jealousy over a boy that triggered the most popular girl in class to single me out for, I suppose, revenge. Revenge turned into habitual teasing and social exclusion. It wasn't long before I became the center of a cruel game orchestrated by the alpha girl in the class. And when she decided I didn't belong, everyone else followed. For the others, it wasn't about me, it was about belonging. By earning her approval, they were guaranteed their place in the tribe. But as a child, of course, I didn't understand that. All I knew was that I had become invisible and yet somehow painfully exposed. Most days felt really heavy, although I did thankfully have a couple of friends that stuck with me. But when walking to school with them, my head was always filled with the anticipation of the mean comments that I knew inevitably would be directed at me that day. I was rarely fully present in class or during recess because my by then highly developed internal radar was constantly scanning for the next threat, like the small notes that were passed around the desks with comments about my appearance, or the faces being pulled in my direction, only to be straightened out again as the teacher finished writing the math problem on the blackboard. From the parties I didn't get invited to, where the invitations were being freely passed around in the classroom, to the moments in PE class when I was always chosen last on the team. I felt so small, and each time I stood there, waiting to be picked, for me it was another painful reminder that I wasn't good enough. I just didn't belong. These weren't the kinds of moments that would catch anyone's attention if you looked at them in isolation. They were small, quiet acts, micro events that seemed insignificant on the surface, but they were constant, unpredictable, and persistent. And over time, they chipped away at my sense of self, leaving me feeling insignificant, unwanted, and deeply flawed. Outwardly, I was pretending like I didn't care and none of it impacted me. But internally, I was scared, extremely sad, lonely, and exhausted. I didn't know what I could do to make them stop, and I felt completely powerless. I started to shrink into myself. I stopped raising my hand in class. I lingered near the teachers, hoping their presence would keep me safe. I hung back after the bell, waiting until everyone else had left before making my way out, always on high alert. I became a master at predicting the movements of my bullies and avoiding them as much as possible. But hiding didn't always work. I remember one day I walked out to the bike parking after everyone else had left, and once I got to my bike, noticed that my seat had been slashed. My heart sank and I wanted to cry, but I held back the tears, not wanting anyone to see my weakness. I knew instantly it was no accident, it was my bike that had been vandalized, and I later found out a boy in my class had done it on orders from my bully. And this was my reality for quite a long time. Some days were better than others, of course, and the bullying ebbed and flowed, but my nervous system became highly unregulated and my self-worth was in the dumps. And then there was that day. It was recess on a fall day, and I was standing near the school building, trying to blend into the background as I always did. Suddenly, a boy stepped into the center of the crowd that had gathered, holding up a condom he had found on the ground at the back of the schoolyard. He made a big show of it, and before I could react, he threw it at me. I'll never forget the sound of the laughter. My face burned as I yanked the condom off my head and dropped it to the ground. But the damage was done. My classmates weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at me. The humiliation was unbearable, a wave of shame so overwhelming that I wanted to disappear. I can still feel it to this day. In that moment, something broke inside me. That day, I finally told my teacher what had been happening. She intervened and the bullying eased. My mom even found a handwritten note from the Popular Girl clan in our mailbox later that day that read, "We end with peace." But while the external attacks stopped, the internal wounds stayed. I felt hollow, my sense of self-worth completely eroded. And because I didn't have the tools or anyone to truly process it with, I carried those wounds with me. I worked hard to maintain the facade of everything's okay because Now it was, wasn't it? But this pain was like frozen in time. The experience had imprinted a "you are not good enough" billboard in my mind, and that followed me everywhere I went and affected every decision I made for years to follow. Now, as a young teenager with a deep lack of self-worth, I became an expert at hiding. I learned how to deflect attention, how to blend into the background so that no one would notice me. But as I got older, that hiding turned into anger. I became defensive, arrogant, and even rude sometimes, as if projecting strength could keep people from seeing how deeply I was hurting. After a few months in a high school I was actually excited to go to because I would get to study media and communication, the same pattern from primary school of social exclusion started to materialize. And the final drop was when my childhood friend one day decided to sit down with the rest of the class instead of with me. I couldn't face reliving it all over again, and with the help of my parents, who negotiated with the principal at my local school, I was able to transfer mid-year by picking up some additional schoolwork to catch up with the new subjects. And this time, in order to protect myself, I built walls around me so high and thick that even I lost sight of who I really was. Surface-level relationships became my norm. I didn't let anyone in, not really. And while it may have looked like I was thriving, I was just surviving. After high school, I was incredibly relieved to move away and threw myself into a new life as a student. I thought the past was behind me, but instead of facing my wounds, I just buried them deeper, numbing the pain with overexercising, binge drinking, and casual relationships. I convinced myself I was fine because everyone was doing it. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore my inner pain, my past was always there, just beneath the surface. It was showing up when meeting new people, and I was so preoccupied with what I was going to say, how it would come off, and what they would think of me, that I was completely unable to stay in the present and focus on them and what they were actually saying. It showed up at parties where I would feel so uncomfortable in my skin, not knowing if I should sit or stand, walk or talk. I would make myself busy by getting a drink, going to the bathroom, getting some air, to avoid what I felt were awkward conversations and situations. And of course, none of this resulted in deep, meaningful connection. So I was social, but not getting the benefit of social interaction that I was actually looking for, friendship and community. It was a painful existence of wanting something so bad, yet being too scared to tear down my own walls in order to let others in. As I continued my adult life, I continued this existence of make-believe, almost like I was playing a supportive role in my own movie. And over time, I created a story in my head of the person I was. I was shy, introverted, and very independent. And by creating this narrative, I gave myself permission to remain in my shell because I wasn't the type of person that enjoyed interaction with others, and I definitely didn't need anyone. But over time, experiences that I had, especially when I started solo traveling in 2017, showed me that this theory, this story, wasn't actually true. I met people I truly enjoyed connecting with, like the girl in Laos who told me how to make my own jewelry from repurposed old fishing equipment and stones from the Mekong River, or the driver who showed me around Ho Chi Minh in Cambodia, telling me all about his family and his home country that he loved so much. Once I stepped out of my comfort zone and started seeking adventure, the focus started to shift from myself and my experience to that of others. Because through them, I was able to feed my curiosity about new places and cultures that I visited, and I experienced both that I sometimes needed help, and that connection, although still a bit uncomfortable, was possible and even enjoyable. Over time, I've gone back into my childhood experiences of bullying and actively been looking for what it gave me. Because there is always something good that can be extracted from a painful memory, even if we only see it decades later. And there are a few things that this experience has given me that has impacted my life positively in big, big ways, and that I feel tremendous gratitude for. The first one is resilience, and I now understand the saying, resilience is built in the fire. These years of adversity taught me something I carry with me every single day, which is I can do hard things. Surviving the bullying wasn't just about getting through it. It was about proving to myself, even as a child, that I could endure. That resilience has shaped how I approach challenges today. Whether it's building businesses, moving countries, or navigating relationships, there's an inner strength that I draw from, a deep knowing that I've faced the worst before and come out the other side. And I know that no matter how long it takes or how difficult it gets, I'll get through it. But here's the thing. Resilience does not mean being unbreakable. It means allowing yourself to feel broken and then choosing piece by piece to put yourself back together in a way that feels right for you. I have certainly felt broken by what I experienced, and even in preparing for this podcast episode, I have shed quite a few tears. But now I know that doesn't mean I am weak or that there is something wrong with me. That pain is a part of who I am. What matters is that I make space for the pain when it needs to be heard and felt, but then I remind myself of the gifts I received as a consequence and that are now enabling me to move forward with gusto, despite of or because of my experiences. The second superpower I acquired because of my experiences is compassion. At the time, I couldn't see my bullies as anything other than sources of pain. But looking back, I can see the cracks in their armor. Their cruelty wasn't about me. It was a reflection of their own struggles, their own feelings of not being enough. This shift in perspective has been life-changing. It's helped me approach others with more kindness and understanding, even when their actions are hurtful. And isn't that what we all want? To be seen, not for the worst thing that we've ever done, because we all do stupid stuff, but for the human underneath? Compassion isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about recognizing the humanity in ourselves and others. When I reconnected with my childhood bully as an adult, I was able to have a real conversation with her. Hearing her side of the story didn't erase the pain she caused, but it gave me something more powerful. It gave me closure. It reminded me that we're all just doing our best with what we've been given, and sometimes that means we hurt others along the way. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you this because I know I'm not alone. We all have a story, a moment or experience that left a mark. And maybe like me, you've buried it deep, hoping it will go away. But here's the truth. Those stories don't disappear. They shape us. And until we unpack them and decide what we will make them mean, they hold power over us. Imagine how much lighter you could feel if you stopped running from your pain and rather shifted your narrative from victimhood to empowerment. I promise you there is so much relief and clarity on the other side of that process. So right now, I want you to pause for a moment and think about your own story. Maybe it's something you rarely talk about, or maybe you've never talked about it at all. Maybe it's something that still catches you off guard when it resurfaces, or perhaps it's something you've pushed so far down that you hardly notice it anymore. But what if you allowed yourself to take a closer look? What if you gave yourself the gift of unpacking that story, not to relive the pain, but to rewrite the story you're telling yourself about it? To find meaning in the messiness and strength in the struggle. If you're still listening, then that means you want to make that change. You have a story to rewrite. So here's what I want you to do. Write down your story. Take your time, get it all out on paper or on your computer. Feel into the experience and cry when you need to. Rage when you need to. Let the words pour out of you with no judgment, no edits until you feel complete. Then leave it for a few days and come back and read through it again, but this time with fresh eyes. This time, you will look for the good, for the lessons, for the strength, for the joy. And with those insights, you start writing a new story. And that doesn't mean changing anything that happened, but it means seeing it through a different lens, pulling out the parts that have enriched you and your life ever since. Now, I know firsthand how daunting this task can feel, having gone through it myself, but I also know the freedom that comes with having done it. When you stop letting your story control you and start shaping it into something more meaningful, everything changes. And if you're ready to do this for yourself, but you want some support in the process, I'm here to help. Together, we'll get your story out of you and down on paper, and I'll help you navigate and identify the sources of inspiration and strength that are there, but can be difficult to spot. And then we will take those strengths and see not only how they have helped shape your life until now, but how you can intentionally use them to create more joy and abundance in your life moving forward. The link to book a call with me is in the show notes. Today, I'm grateful for my co-founder, Megan. She's been a tremendous support for me in preparing this episode and helped give me the courage to put it out there. I truly value all the interaction we have on a daily and weekly basis, both around Me Reimagined, but also all the things we experience in our daily lives. And I love how we build each other up and challenge each other to go beyond what we think is possible. I'm grateful for cuddles with the cat my husband and I are currently taking care of. Now that winter is here, she is spending more time indoors, and that means I get to snuggle up next to her more often to feel her incredibly soft fur and listen to her mellow purring as I stroke her. It's such a beautiful way to calm my nervous system and just a great reason for taking a little break from work. I'm grateful for my friend Ruba, who is one of the amazing women inside of our free Me Reimagined Facebook group. She is courageously sharing her journey of reimagining herself and her bold vision for 2025. And I love the energy and conviction she has. It's truly contagious. If you haven't already joined this community, you can find the link in the show notes. We'd love to have you join us. And finally, I'm grateful for you, for listening, and for holding space for me to tell this story today. Until next time, please remember, you are amazing.
You do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone.